These 5 pennies are about to become illegal to melt, illegal to hoard, and potentially worth a fortune. The United States government is moving closer than ever to eliminating the penny entirely, and when that happens, every single one of these coins explodes in value overnight. We're talking about a 1947 wheat cent that collectors are already paying over $200 for in the right condition. A 1925 Lincoln penny with a subtle error that most people throw back into a jar without ever checking. A 1957 D that looks completely ordinary until you flip it over and realize you're holding a coin worth thousands. A 1927 D that has quietly climbed in value every single year for the last decade. And a 1937 wheat penny that major auction houses have sold for prices that would make your jaw drop. The penny ban isn't a rumor anymore. Legislation is on the table. And if you have any of these 5 coins sitting in a collection, a drawer, or an old coffee can in your garage, you need to know exactly what they're worth before the market shifts and it's too late. This is the coin that most people throw back in the jar without a second thought. A 1947 Lincoln wheat penny. 15 cents in a dealer's junk bin. That's what they'll tell you. But they're wrong. Because in January 2025, a single 1947 wheat penny sold at Heritage Auctions for $26,400. 1 penny. $26,000. And with the penny ban looming, that number is about to look like a discount. Here's why this coin is so dangerous to ignore. The San Francisco Mint struck only 99 million pennies in 1947. That sounds like a lot until you realize Philadelphia made 190 million and Denver made 194 million. San Francisco made roughly half of what the other 2 mints produced. But here's where it gets wild. Of those 99 million coins, only about 13,000 are estimated to survive in collectible condition today. That's a survival rate of 1 out of every 7,600 coins. The rest were melted, lost, damaged, or destroyed over nearly 80 years of circulation. And once the penny ban takes effect, there won't be any more entering circulation. Ever. What survives is all there will ever be. Now flip this coin over and look at the reverse. You see those 2 wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent? This is why collectors call them wheat pennies. But what you really need to focus on are the details between those stalks. Because the 1947 has a documented double die obverse error that most people walk right past. The variety is cataloged as FS101, and it shows clear doubling on the letters of In God We Trust and on the date. The doubling is subtle on worn coins, but on a well-preserved example it jumps right out at you. A double die 1947 in MS64 grade has sold for $748. In MS67, that price climbs past $3,000. And the thing is, most people who own this coin have never flipped it under a magnifying glass to check. But the double die isn't even the only error to hunt for. The 1947 also comes with a repunched mint mark variety, cataloged as FS504. What happened is the San Francisco mint worker who punched the mint mark into the working die didn't get it right the first time. So they punched it again. And now if you look closely below the date, you'll see a second ghost image of the slightly offset from the primary one. It's literally an S over S. In MS67, that repunched mint mark error has sold for $1,350 for a coin that most people think is worth 15 cents. And there's one more thing that makes the 1947 special that almost nobody talks about. 1947 was the first year the United States Mint restored the original bronze composition after World War II. From 1944 through 1946, pennies were struck from recycled ammunition shell casings. They removed tin from the alloy, making those coins technically brass, not bronze. But in 1947, the mint brought tin back into the formula, returning to the original 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc recipe that had been used since 1909. That makes the 1947 S the first San Francisco penny in 5 years struck in true bronze. Collectors who understand metallurgy pay a premium for that distinction, especially when the coin still shows its original red copper luster. So when you're going through your wheat pennies and you find a 1947 with that little S below the date, do not toss it in the 15-cent pile. Check for doubling on In God We Trust. Check for a repunched mint mark. Check the color. Because the difference between a coin worth 15 cents and a coin worth $26,000 is 5 minutes with a magnifying glass. And once the penny ban makes these coins impossible to find in pocket change, that window closes forever. $85,000. That's what one single 1925 penny sold for at Heritage Auctions. Not a gold coin. Not a silver dollar. A copper penny from the roaring 20s that most people would toss in a junk jar without a second look. And with the penny ban looming, coins like this are about to become relics of a dead currency, the kind of relics that collectors will fight over. The 1925 wheat penny was struck at 3 mints, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, and the total production was just under 189 million coins. That sounds like a lot until you realize that the survival rate in collectible condition is absolutely brutal. Out of nearly 140 million Philadelphia pennies, only about 5,500 high-grade examples still exist. That's a survival rate of 0.004%. Denver? Only 750 survivors from 22.6 million struck. And San Francisco is the real shocker. Out of 26.4 million coins, only about 450 have survived in high grade. That's a survival rate of 0.0017%. Almost every single one of them was used up, worn down, and destroyed by a century of circulation. Now here's what makes the 1925 D penny a monster. A single 1925 D-graded MS-66 red, meaning it still has its original copper color, sold for $85,500. Let that sink in. A penny. $85,500. And the reason is simple. Denver pennies from this era have notoriously weak strikes. Finding one with sharp detail on Lincoln's hair, clean wheat lines on the reverse, and full original red luster is like finding a unicorn in your pocket change. But the errors are where this coin gets truly dangerous for your wallet. The 1925 S double die Obverse, cataloged as FS101, is one of the most thrilling finds in the entire Lincoln Cent series. During the die-making process, the hub impressed the design onto the working die twice at slightly different angles. The result is a ghostly doubling effect you can see on Lincoln's eye. It looks like he has an extra eyelid. You'll also catch it on the letters of Liberty and In God We Trust under magnification. Confirmed examples in circulated condition sell for $50 to $200, and an MS-65 brown specimen sold for over $1,100 at auction. But here's the trick most people miss. True double dies show three-dimensional, shelf-like doubling. If the doubling looks flat and mushy, that's worthless machine doubling. You need that sharp raised separation between the impressions. Then there's the 1925 S/S repunched mint mark, cataloged as FS501 and listed in Konicka's top 100 RPMs. Back in the 1920s, mint workers had to punch the S mint mark into each die by hand using a small steel rod. Sometimes the first punch missed or wasn't deep enough, so they'd punch again. That second strike created a visible shadow, 2 S mint marks layered on top of each other. An MS-64 red example sold for $1,920 at auction. Even circulated examples with clear repunching trade for $100 to $500. Look directly below the date. If you see what looks like extra curves or serifs attached to the S, you might be holding a small fortune. And don't overlook off-center strikes. When the blank planche wasn't properly centered between the dies, you get a coin with part of the design missing and a crescent-shaped blank area. A 1925 penny struck 50% off-center, but still showing the full date can sell for $200 to $500. Even minor off-center errors in the 5 to 10% range are worth $5 to $15, which is still 500 to 1,500 times face value on a 1-cent coin. The 1925 wheat penny is 100 years old this year. It survived the Great Depression, 2 world wars, and a century of being ignored in jars and drawers. And now, with the penny facing elimination, every single one of these becomes a permanent artifact, a piece of American history that will never be minted again. Check your wheat pennies. Check the mint mark. Check for doubling. Because a coin worth a fraction of a cent at face value could be worth your entire car payment. Or more. 1957. Eisenhower is in the White House, gas costs 24 cents a gallon, and deep inside the Denver Mint, a worker just made a mistake that would be worth more than a brand new car 68 years later. He's holding a steel punch with a tiny letter D on the end, and he's about to stamp it into a working die. But his hand slips. The D lands slightly off, so he lines it up again and strikes it a second time. Still not perfect, he hits it a third time. 3 punches, 3 slightly different positions, and now that die has a D that looks like it's vibrating, like it's shaking, like it's screaming at you from the surface of the coin. That die went into production, and it struck thousands of pennies before anyone noticed. And today, one of those pennies sitting in your jar, in your junk drawer, in a roll you picked up from the bank, could put $4,000 in your pocket overnight. This is the 1957 D over D over D repunched mint mark, and it is one of the most dramatic RPM errors in the entire Lincoln Cent series. Most repunched mint marks are subtle. You need a loop. You need perfect lighting. You need patience. Not this one. This one hits you in the face. The tripling on the D is so strong, so visible, that even a beginner with a $5 magnifying glass can spot it. And that's exactly what makes it dangerous. Dangerous for the people who don't know what they're looking at, because they're throwing money in the trash every single day. Let me explain exactly what a repunched mint mark is, and why the mint can never make this mistake again. Before 1990, mint marks were not part of the master die. They were added by hand. A worker at the branch mint would take a steel punch and physically hammer the mint mark letter into each individual working die. Think about that. A human being, standing at a workbench, trying to perfectly position a tiny letter on a hardened steel surface and hit it with exactly the right force in exactly the right spot. Every single time. Thousands of dies a year. It's a miracle there aren't more errors. When the punch landed in a slightly different spot on the second or third strike, you got a repunched mint mark. The old position and the new position both show on the die, and every coin struck from that die carries the evidence. In 1990, the mint changed everything. They started engraving the mint mark directly into the master die using machines. No more hand punching. No more human error. No more repunched mint marks. Ever. That means every single RPM in existence was made before 1990, and they will never, ever make another one. The supply is locked. It's done. It's finished. And when the penny gets eliminated, these coins become historical artifacts from a process that no longer exists, struck on a denomination that no longer exists. That's 2 layers of extinction on one coin. Now here's where the money is. A 1957 D penny in average circulated condition is worth 1 cent. Maybe 2 cents for the copper. Nobody cares. But a 1957 D with the D over D over D repunched mint mark in choice uncirculated condition is sold for over $4,000. That is a 400,000% increase in value from a coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. And here's the thing. Circulated examples still carry serious value. Even in fine or very fine condition, confirmed RPM varieties of this coin sell for $200 to $500 depending on the strength of the repunching. You don't need a mint state gem to cash in on this one. So how do you find it? Grab every 1957 D penny you can get your hands on. Check the D mint mark below the date on the obverse. You're looking for doubling, tripling, or any shadow of a second D peeking out from behind the primary one. On the strongest examples, you'll see 3 distinct impressions stacked on top of each other, slightly offset. It almost looks like the letter is moving. If you see anything unusual, compare it to the known RPM varieties listed in the Cherry Picker's Guide. The 1957 D has multiple recognized RPM varieties, but the D over D over D triple punch is the king. This coin is a perfect example of why you need to check every single penny that crosses your path. Not just the old ones, not just the ones that look special, every single one. Because the difference between a coin worth 1 cent and a coin worth $4,000 is invisible to the naked eye. You need magnification, you need knowledge, and you need to actually look. Most people never look. Most people will never know what they had. But you're not most people. You're watching this video and now you know exactly what to search for. $52,900. That's what one 1927 D Lincoln penny sold for at auction. A single coin made almost 100 years ago at the Denver Mint, sitting in somebody's collection, worth more than most people's annual salary. And the terrifying part is this: millions of these coins were made, 27 million to be exact, and the overwhelming majority of them were spent, lost, melted, or thrown into junk drawers and forgotten. But the ones that survived, the ones that still have that blazing original copper color, those are the coins that are rewriting the record books right now. Let's talk about why 1927 was a trap year at the Denver Mint. Before 1927, Denver had a serious problem. Their dies were cracking. Their strikes were sloppy. Coins were coming off the presses with weak details, mushy lettering, and flat features. It was a mess. But 1927, that was the year Denver finally got it right. The strike quality jumped. The detail sharpened up. And that created something collectors are absolutely obsessed with: a perfect storm of lower mintage and higher quality. Only 27 million 1927 D pennies were made compared to 144 million from Philadelphia. That's roughly 5 times fewer coins. And of those 27 million, the number that survived in pristine, uncirculated, full red condition, you could probably fit them all in a single shoebox. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Grab any 1927 D penny and flip it over. Look at that little D mint mark sitting right below the date. Does it look a little off? Does it look like there's a ghost of a second D right next to it? If so, you might be looking at the FS 501 repunched mint mark, one of the most sought-after Lincoln cent varieties of the entire 1920s. Here's what happened. Back in the 1920s, mint workers had to punch those tiny mint mark letters onto the dies by hand. A steel punch, a hammer, and a human hand trying to get that letter perfectly positioned. And sometimes they missed. They'd strike it once, realize the placement was slightly off, and then punch it again in the correct spot. But the damage was already done. That first impression left a ghost image, a shadow of the letter sitting just north of where it was supposed to be. And that mistake, that tiny fraction of a millimeter of human error, turned a 1-cent coin into an $800 coin at the MS-63 brown grade level. That's the auction record for a confirmed FS 501. But repunched mint marks aren't the only thing hiding on these coins. The 1927 Philadelphia issue, the no mint mark version, has its own double die obverse, classified as FS 101. We're talking about visible doubling on the lettering of "In God We Trust and Liberty." A dramatic example in MS-64 red sold for over $1,200. And these aren't the kind of errors that require a NASA microscope to find. Strong double dies on the 1927 are visible under a basic $10 loop. The doubling shows up on the letters as a shelf-like effect, as if each letter has a tiny ledge underneath it. Once you see it, you can never unsee it. And then there's the error that nobody talks about, the lamination error. When the copper planches were being prepared, sometimes the metal didn't bond properly. Impurities in the alloy created weak spots between layers of the coin's surface. Over time, those weak spots crack, peel, and flake off, leaving a coin that looks like it's literally shedding its own skin. On the 1927D specifically, there are confirmed examples with bright streak laminations. Long, shiny lines cutting across the surface of the coin where the metal separated. These coins are selling on auction sites right now for $50 to $65, even in heavily circulated condition. And the really dramatic ones, the ones with large flaps of metal lifting off the surface, those can push past $100. There's also the wood grain error. This one is wild. Some 1927 pennies, especially the San Francisco issues, developed a surface pattern during the minting process that looks exactly like the grain of a piece of wood. Alternating light and dark streaks running across the face of Abraham Lincoln, across the wheat stalks, across everything. It happens when the copper alloy isn't properly mixed, creating visible banding in the metal itself. Bold wood grain examples sell for $25 to $50, and the exceptionally dramatic ones push higher. So what should you be looking at when you hold a 1927D in your hand? 3 things. First, the mint mark, is that D doubled, showing any sign of a repunch? Second, the surface, do you see streaks, cracks, peeling, or wood grain patterns that indicate a lamination or alloy error? And third, the color. If that coin still has any hint of original red copper color instead of the typical chocolate brown, you are holding something that could be worth hundreds, potentially thousands, of dollars more than you think. $45,000. That's what a single 1937 S. Lincoln cent sold for, and the person who found it had no idea what they were holding. They almost spent it. Almost tossed it into a tip jar at a coffee shop. One more second of carelessness and $45,000 would have disappeared into someone's cash register forever. But they didn't. Something told them to look closer. Something told them to flip that coin over one more time. And what they saw changed everything. The 1937 S is one of the most dangerous wheat pennies in existence. Dangerous because it looks so ordinary. It doesn't scream rare. It doesn't have a weird color or an obvious crack running across Lincoln's face. At first glance, it's just another old brown penny from the San Francisco Mint. And that's exactly why so many people have already thrown them away. That's exactly why the ones that remain are becoming more and more valuable with every passing year. And now, with the penny ban about to wipe this coin off the face of the earth permanently, the clock isn't just ticking. It's almost at zero. Here's what makes the 1937 S so special. San Francisco only struck about 34 million of these. That sounds like a lot until you realize that Philadelphia was pumping out 300 million pennies a year during the same period. 34 million is nothing. That's a drop in the ocean. And of those 34 million, most were spent. Most were circulated until Lincoln's face was nothing but a flat smudge. Most were melted. Most were lost. The surviving population in collectible condition is a fraction of what was originally minted. And the ones with errors, those are practically extinct. The first error you need to check for is the repunched mint mark. This is where the San Francisco Mint punched the S into the die, looked at it, and punched it again, slightly off from where it was supposed to go. What you end up with is a coin that has 2 visible S marks overlapping each other. It's subtle. You need magnification. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. The S looks like it's vibrating. It looks like it's been stamped twice because it was stamped twice. And collectors go absolutely insane for this variety. A clean 1937 S with a confirmed repunched mint mark in uncirculated condition has sold for over $8,000. $8,000 for a penny that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. But the repunched mint mark isn't even the biggest prize. The error that sends this coin into 5-figure territory is the double die obverse. Look at the date. Look at the word liberty. Look at "In God We Trust." If any of those elements appear to have a shadow, a ghost image sitting just slightly off from the main impression, you are holding a coin that could pay off your car. The doubling on the 1937S is not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just a slight thickening of the letters. Sometimes it's a faint shelf on the top of the numbers in the date. But even minor doubling on this coin has pushed values past $15,000 in recent auctions. Strong doubling? That's where you hit the $45,000 mark. That's where one penny becomes a down payment on a house. And here's what most people don't realize. The 1937S also comes with die crack varieties that collectors pay serious premiums for. A die crack running through the wheat ears on the reverse, a thin raised line where the steel die was literally breaking apart as it struck this coin, can add thousands of dollars to the value. These cracks mean the die was at the end of its life. It was exhausted. It was fracturing under pressure. And the coins it produced in those final moments carry the scars of that destruction. Collectors don't see damage, they see history. They see a coin that was born in the dying breath of a broken die, and they will pay a fortune to own it. Now multiply all of this by the penny ban. Every single day that passes, more 1937S pennies get thrown away. More get tossed into jars that end up at Coinstar machines. More get lost in couch cushions and forgotten in drawers. The supply is shrinking in real time. And when the ban hits and pennies are officially pulled from circulation, the remaining 1937S coins, especially the ones with errors, won't just be rare. They'll be relics. They'll be artifacts from a currency that no longer exists. And the prices will reflect that reality in ways that will make today's values look like pocket change.